Good morning, everyone. Thank you for sticking with me through these couple days. I know it's been a lot of talking, a lot of conferences, so I appreciate you hanging out. My name is Devon Horntvedt. I'm an environmental engineer, professional engineer in the state of Colorado. I've been working with Idarado for the last 10 years. I do a lot of our remedial action plan and compliance sampling, write our reports. And my responsibilities have really started to grow over those 10 years. And in the last 5, with the entrance into the contingency plan, as Camille mentioned, we've really been focusing on the water in the basin. I wanted to start with just a little bit of discussion of acid rock drainage because it gets a little simplified, I think, sometimes. And it helps to have a comprehensive understanding of what's really going on there to understand the challenges that we're actually facing up there on the path. So our overall pyrite oxidation reaction that you see all the time, we saw a couple times yesterday in the slides, your iron sulfides meeting up with oxygen and water, forming your sulfuric acid. Every time you see that H over there, that's some acid formation, right? So, only it were so simple. We have contributing reactions that are going on well beyond the overall reaction. And as you start to dissolve your pyrite, you'll also, you can also have the dissolved iron that's already present in the water that can, again, start dissolving additional pyrite and forming another set of these H's and SO4s. And then the ferrous is the Fe2+, ferric is the Fe3+, just the two valence states of your iron in the water. The Fe2 can create more Fe3, your Fe3 creates more Fe2, and this is all happening with your mineral sulfides. And so you end up in this spiral action in our mine pools. And you can see the acidity being produced over here too on the bottom. You also have microbial catalysis going on, and this is one that a lot of people don't consider either, with your acidithiobacillus ferrooxidans.
Right.
And thiooxidans, and they are reducing, they actually metabolize some of these metals that are present in our pools. And these pools, especially ones that we haven't mined since 1977, so this is a long-term establishment of these ecologies that develop inside our mountains. It's a really impressive ecosystem that is kind of a world all of its own. And so you end up with bacteria that are actually using these metals as their energy source, and they can also reduce and start generating more of this action that you see over on the left and up top. You can also get ferrohydrites that start to form. So this one is a real bugger, because when you're Fe2+, you want the iron to complex with oxygen, ideally, or hydroxides, or whatever it may be, and come together as a solid. So when you see it all by itself, it's a dissolved ion, very, very small, very, very difficult to remove. As they start combining with other components, such as the hydroxide in this one, they start to get bigger, and we can pull them out. And this happens once the pH starts to climb, and this is our goal. With limestone reactors, we add carbonates, we pull the pH up, and the iron, once it starts to complex, actually starts to produce more acidity again, and it wants to drive itself back down. And so this is kind of a secondary acidity reaction. And we can also have ochres that start forming, and really, these are much higher pHs. The iron oxides there, we're getting up over pHs of 8 and 9, but you see again, that it forms hydrogen ions. It wants to drive itself back down. Just a little reference for all those. So, if only it were so simple. We have a few sets of minerals that is particularly common around this area. This is a big one for us. The zinc sulfides, it's not just iron sulfides that are easily dissociable in these mine pool environments. Zinc sulfides, copper, iron sulfides, and they're all, as you start interacting with more of those dissolved iron, they can get reduced. You see the H's over here and the sulfate that produces the sulfuric acid in pure water, and as it interacts with water, rather. And once again, starts driving your pools down. So a lot going on in these pools. It's not just a simple oxidation reaction. It's not just a simple reaction with the water and the sulfides. You can try to eliminate the oxygen, which many people have done, but there's other mechanisms that are going to happen that start to reduce these metals. And so when we approach these problems, we're really trying to consider all of the potential mechanisms to develop a sustainable solution for these mountains. So what are our options? We can try to prevent it from forming. Been discussed kind of at length yesterday and a little bit with Camille's presentation this morning as far as source controls, keeping the water from interacting with those metals at all. But you also saw that map from Telluride to here, and we have hundreds of miles of tunnels. We have miles of vein structures that are continually receiving snow melt, rain, and it's coming down and it drains sometimes into the tunnels. Sometimes it comes out of springs on the surface, but it's the stuff obviously in the tunnels that we're really worried about. And so you can either prevent it or you can deal with it once it's been created. So we really worked hard on the preventing angle and spent a considerable sum in the 90s to do what we could to prevent and really just kind of see and evaluate what the impacts were there. And you kind of saw it in Camille's graphs that we had a nice 20 to 25% reduction, but we didn't quite get to where we wanted to be. And so we're starting to consider and really think hard about the second line. Yeah, a little bit of expounding on that prevention. Source controls with the diverting the water, consolidating the waste so that you don't have a bunch of disparate piles scattered around. You can kind of control the situation a little more once you can consolidate, vegetate. Bulkheads are a consideration that some would say is a source control. I'm not totally sold on that idea. Really the big mechanism with bulkheads and the idea is to inundate so quickly that you remove that oxygen from the system. And when you think about how the acid rock drainage is forming simply, you might say, okay, we can prevent acid rock drainage if we don't have oxygen in our mine pools. But once you start diving a little deeper and you start seeing that the iron can reduce itself, you start seeing that there's microbial catalysis happening that doesn't require oxygen as well. Especially in these large legacy mine complexes, which have these huge ecologies, the idea of controlling that system to the point where none of this is going to form just really isn't a feasible option, in my opinion. Another strategy that people use are bactericides, but once again, with that established mine pool ecology, you're just not going to kill everything. And once that bactericide kind of runs out, the bacteria are going to come back into your pool, and you've spent a lot of money for not a lot of effect. It is pretty useful. They use it in active mines, so as soon as they open up a face, they'll spray it. And since it's not in a mining pool, it can be very effective in limiting some of that generation. But in old legacy mine systems like the ones we work in, they're just really not a feasible option either. So what can we do if it already exists? Well, the top two are ones that we currently use, reinfiltrating it back into the ground system. If you have a subterranean area that, as Camille mentioned, it might be full of zeolites, clays, active minerals that can pull some of these dissolved ions out, it can absolutely help as the water moves through the planet. It acts as a filter, and what comes out is much cleaner on the other side. Dilution, that's the one that we're all really kind of living with. Everyone's heard the phrase, dilution is the solution to pollution. That's true up to a point, because we all see around here. Active treatment has its own challenges. We'll talk about those in just a little bit. And passive treatment is another solution that we've been really looking hard at and trying to determine how it could apply to some of our different mines. As Camille also mentioned, the mines that we're really focused on are the ones that are on our own properties, but we're also really heavily considering ones that are just simply above our compliance point. And from where the state made our compliance point, we kind of inherently became responsible for some of those that Idarado never mined. But we have been working with and we've installed remedial elements, such as infiltration zones. They worked well for years, but we're starting to see some of those systems that tire out after 25 years of use, and we're just really kind of trying to take a holistic approach, evaluate where our big loadings are, what we can do about it, and what we can do about it in a sustainable manner. Chemical active treatment. So the application of concentrated chemicals to try to adjust the pH to force chemical reactions that you want to see happen. This is lime precipitation plants, maybe sodium hydroxide, whatever it is. It's typically we're trying to drive the pH way up so that these metals, and zinc is just about the toughest. You got to get the pH up to about a 9, 9.5 for it to start oxidizing and getting to a point where the particles are large enough that we can pull them out, whether that's through slow sand filters or what other traditional chemical treatment systems. Yeah, they require a large, consistent power supply. Typically, if you're going to spend the money on a big system like that, you would want to collect a number of disparate portals and centralize them in a location. And anybody who's going on the tour with us is going to see the challenges associated with trying to gather up a number of portals and bringing them to a single point. You've got avalanche zones, easement considerations, mudslides, rocks, vandalism, you name it. It really, by centralizing your collection, you're really centralizing your risk. And if that plant were to go offline for whatever reason, you lose treatment to all the different portals that you've collected. And now you've ruined everything that you've just really worked hard to try to fix. So I kind of mentioned those already. The constant on-site personnel and access, Red Mountain Pass, it'll be closed for a couple months at a time sometimes. So we really can't rely on it. It's not the most sustainable idea. Traditional membrane active treatment. So this RO system, some of these kinds of ideas, they're a really high energy system. They're very capital intensive, and they, at least up to this point, aren't really suited for the dissolved metal concentrations, the dissolved loads that we see coming out of some of these portals. And once again, they're just very energy intensive. You got high pressure requirements, you're backwashing every 10 minutes, and then you have a brine that you actually have to dispose of, and now you've got your sulfate and everything's condensed, and things can get pretty gnarly pretty quick. Passive treatment, some of the advantages, it's typically gravity driven, ideally. You see some where that maybe you're using a solar panel or something on site to do a little bit of flow management, but ideally it's gravity driven, and it's using engineering to accelerate those natural processes that Mother Nature has given us. She's trying to fix herself all the time. And so we take some of those processes and we just engineer them to happen more quickly and really in a controlled manner that we can persist in the treatment. But they're pretty finicky. They're pretty finicky systems. You need to decide, you need to figure out exactly which one's going to work for you. Some of them want anoxic influent conditions. Some of them will work better with oxygen in the water, anoxic being no dissolved oxygen present in the water. They've got a pretty specific range of influent concentrations, typically, that the water will even work on. They struggle with some specific analytes. Zinc in particular is kind of a tougher one. And they require a very large footprint. And for the most part, if you're working with a mine that has any substantial flow and load, it's going to require a footprint. If you are using a reactive media in your system, you got to keep an eye on it. They need to be replaced after time, and the reactive media is zero valent iron. I mean, they can run up to $200, $300 a ton. And the idea behind passive treatment truly is a massive system, especially when you're dealing with mass coming out of a portal. So you want it to be really big, you want it to be really robust, and given our just topography up there on the Mountain Pass, it's not the most viable option. a few different types of passive systems, biochemical reactors, sulfate-reducing bioreactors, aerobic wetlands. You're using a biological activity to try to sequester metals. A lot of times you'll get these bugs to take them up, but once they die, the metals are in their exoskeleton and then they decompose right back into your wetland. And so you kind of wonder what exactly you accomplished if you can't pull those bugs out once they've pulled the metal up. Same with some wetlands, they can certainly sequester it, and when they pull dissolve and fix them into a solid form so that they stay in the wetland, that's very valuable. But at the same time, if those plants grow up, they decompose, the metals go right back into the area where you've kind of sequestered them for a time. Abiotic reactors, this is really about the reactive media, using limestone, using zero-valent iron, using IRM is one that we investigated hard. I'll talk about just a little bit more. You have sequential alkalinity producing systems, dispersed alkaline substrates, the idea being taking limestone and just spreading it down an entire floodplain for miles and letting the stream work its way through, and it just slowly starts to pick it up. All of these really just require massive areas, and it's all about your mass. You got to be able to match the mass coming out of the tunnel with the mass that you're putting into your system. And that can be pretty tough sometimes. A few of the mechanisms that are operating in passive systems, you get forced precipitation of the metals by raising the pH, so that's the limestone reactors, some of those other ones. Precipitates can also pull dissolved metal out of ions out of solution via adsorption and glomming. I thought about putting encapsulation on there as probably more appropriate, but I really wanted to use glomming.
Is that a technical term?
Technical term, exactly. It's just such a good word. Ion exchange medias, resins, the absorption again directly onto your reactive media. So the iron-rich material which we were using is an activated iron ferromanganese where they boil zinc out with an electric arc furnace of slag metals, scrap metals. And what you're left with is an iron that's incredibly fragmented as you boiled the metal that it wanted to be bound to, and it has these activated surfaces. And what we found, and it was actually Adrian Brown at the International Mine Water Association conference in 2013 where I first learned about IRM. The dissolved zinc just gets sucked into that IRM like a sponge. It's a pretty cool one, and I've got a couple charts on that. So absorption, biological metabolism is sequestering those metals, and then phytoremediation using your plants to try to fix some of that dissolved stuff out of the ground and get it into a woody mass and just stabilize it. But thinking about the challenges in this particular region and how we approach these, you've got the cold, the ice, the snow, freezing temperatures, frost heaving, working conditions. It's incredibly difficult to access. We'll have 20 feet of snow. And you name it up here, and it's just one of the special places on the planet for working with some of the special water on the planet. You have difficult to treat constituents such as manganese and zinc, and just those extreme metal loads make any real feasible pragmatic solution a tough one. Extreme acidities, your footprints just aren't really there because of your topography, no reliable grid power or access. So once again, you have a big water treatment plant, requires a lot of power, and it goes down. Everything you've just done goes away, and that's really just a scenario that I don't find acceptable. And widely varied influent water quality. So as you start looking at some of these passive systems, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. You really need to consider exactly what water you're working with, which can be miles different. A pH is on a log scale. So something that is a pH 6 is 10 times more acidic than a pH 7, is 100 times more acidic than a pH 8, is 1,000 times more acidic than a pH 9. So when we start talking about pHs in the 2.7 versus a pH neutral, that's a lot of acidity we need to neutralize. And we'll have a pH neutral portal flowing 300 yards away from a pH 3 portal. So it's just really a diverse, dynamic environment, and you just have to consider site specificity every time. So extreme challenges require extreme and innovative solutions. And that is what we have been absolutely targeting, just looking. This has been an intractable problem. this is, there's a lot of smart people who have thought about this for a long time and have tried to come up with good quality, pragmatic answers. And it's not because they didn't know what they were doing that we haven't found them yet. Truly, as a human race, this is just right up there on the edge of what we're capable of doing scientifically. And so we are continually looking at those new ideas, new solutions, new ways to apply them, new puzzle pieces, and how we can assemble them together to form what's going to be a sustainable solution. You keep saying that. What does it even mean? What does it even mean by sustainability? It gets tossed around so much. Obviously, context is everything, and this is exactly what I mean when I'm saying it in this one. Capable of being operated independently for a time if we have to. If nobody can get to the plant for a day, are we going to be ruined? If nobody can go turn on generators, are we going to be ruined? Needs to be able to operate independently. It needs to be able to operate on a manageable energy budget. My goal in some of these systems really would be to generate the renewables on site. I think it would be the coolest thing if you could actually power the treatment of your mine water with the fall of your mine water. Stick it in a pipe once you're coming out the back, have a little turbine on the bottom, and be able to clean it up would be just kind of the holy grail of mine water treatment. And we're just looking all the time. Be able to operate in all the different weathers. It's cold, it's hot, it's sunny, the UV. It just needs to be able to handle all the different conditions. We don't want to run a plant for 6 months and then shut it down in the winter for 6 months. That doesn't strike me as a very viable, sustainable solution. We want to be able to have a manageable byproduct. So the chemical treatments of the active systems with their large power requirements, everything you put in, you're going to have to put out. So if you have a pH 3 water, 5 water, whatever it is, all that lime or sodium hydroxide, unless you're going to let it go through the creek, which isn't something that we consider to be an okay solution, you need to take that back out. So you might be hauling 2 trucks of lime in and then 4 trucks, 5 trucks of sludge out, because all that lime you put in, you need to take back out, and now you have to dispose of it in a safe manner. And so really, the minimal amount of sludge you can generate would be the ideal path. Obviously, it needs to be priced in a way that's not going to bankrupt anyone, and that people will want to continue to support the programs, are capable of continuing to support the programs. Minimal impact to the wildlife and the surrounding environment, and without placing the risk on future generations, and just no Band-Aids. We're not looking for Band-Aids. So, in 2013, after our 2012 zinc characterization, once we got to the contingency plan, we started testing some of this iron-rich material from that International Mine Water Association conference, and we ran it through the treasury. This is just a little mock-up of what the design looks like. We were flowing about 200 milliliters a minute, and we did batch tests, column tests, and then this was actually the small version of a pilot, and then we had designed for a large version, and it worked pretty well. Over here you can see our influence zinc concentration was 10.3 milligrams per liter, and we took it down to basically 0 for 700, 800 pore volumes. A pore volume being how much water can fit into your reactor. So this is really considered a very persistent media. You would consider it to be pragmatically effective, just kind of traditionally in the 600 to 1,000 range. And we were still seeing zinc coming all the way down up towards 2,000 pore volumes. And I think we got a little bit of help because the system started to plug a little bit, and it was slowing itself down. The hydraulic retention time within the system was only 15 minutes, which is very quick. In a traditional limestone system, you'd be looking for 24 hours while the water's sitting in the reactor and kind of making its way through. So this was pretty promising. It did have some issues. And that's why we've thought about some other ideas. But and I still think that this could be applied in some interesting directions. They put the Palmerton Superfund zinc site is in Pennsylvania. Palmerton, Pennsylvania is the big flagship kind of model for this one, and they were the ones that were actually producing IRM as they were in the facility using the electric arc furnace. So they had tens of thousands, millions probably of tons on site, a tremendous amount of this IRM material. And when they shut down, they had a groundwater plume of zinc upwards of 150 milligrams per liter of dissolved zinc in the groundwater. And what they did was put a mile-long trench and loaded it up with the IRM. And they did that in '77, I believe. And to this day, it is the groundwater on the other side of that curtain is still sitting below 5 milligrams per liter of zinc from 150 on the other side. And it's been a really big success. But once again, they put in thousands of tons, and this stuff's all located in Chicago. So everything we were going to get here, we were going to have to do by train, and it's all about your mass once again. So we need hundreds of tons to even make a system kind of operate for a year or two, and then we have to replenish that again. And so there's obviously some waste associated with that, and just really kind of some complications. There's some of the limitations, the influent pH range. When we tested it on some water that was a little lower, it started actually taking manganese back in the solution, which was something we did not want to do. There's a little bit of sulfate that was added. There's some potential plugging issues, which we were looking at solving through some kind of innovative engineering ideas with parallel cells that would have, as they plugged, backed water up into a head tank and automatically kicked into a fresh cell. And yes, once again, the large mass, the amount of energy, and the cost just to transport it across the country, although the product itself was about 5% of basically any other reactive media on the market. So that was going to be a huge boon. And I really still think this one has potential kind of in the same groundwater in situ. If anybody has projects or thoughts on if they might like to use it, by all means, get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to talk with you about it. So given those limitations, as we were discussing what the requirements would be with CDPHE, working with regulators for what a large system might look like, I happened across a Green Age Technology presentation at the Animas River Stakeholders Group. I was actually reading the minutes. I don't get to make it to very many meetings, but I do get all the minutes into my email, and I read through what you guys are doing all the time, because I know you're always looking and pushing. And this one really caught my eye, and I thought was pretty interesting, as it mitigates many of those risks that I associate with active treatment, the high energy requirements, the large volumes of sludge, the chemical addition. So what Green Age is doing is they have a cavitation-based membrane system. They collect inline solids with just high flow-through bag filters, 1 micron, 5 micron. They're still working out exactly what they think is going to work best, and they're very early. I mean, this is a baby, this whole concept and idea, but we're looking forward to proving it up if that's the way this goes. So these are the elements that really drew me in. I really like the idea of collecting solids in line. That's one thing that membranes really struggle with. Relatively low power requirements when compared to traditional membrane systems or even traditional chemical adjustment systems. There is no chemical involved, which is pretty incredible, and a lot of chemists will argue with you about this is even a possibility. Relatively low pressures versus classic membrane setups in a traditional RO system to overcome the osmotic pressures that are trying to push back into the membrane. You're up around 500 psi, all the way up to 1,000 psi, which obviously requires some serious pumps, serious energy to get that kind of pressure going on in your system. Green Age does use an RO level membrane MWCO. MWCO is your molecular weight cutoff. So they're typically assigned to Daltons, and Dalton is simply an atomic mass unit. So a hydrogen, 1 AMU, 1 Dalton. Water, oxygen, 2 hydrogens, oxygen 16, water is 18 Daltons. And what the Green Age system that we are testing right now has a 20 Dalton membrane on it. So the pore size is just large enough to move water through it, which is pretty incredible. membrane systems go all the way from the RO level to ultrafiltration, microfiltration. They've experimented with a whole wide range of pore sizes, but GreenAge actually uses the smallest basically on the market, which is pretty incredible given the solutions that they're running by their membranes, and from what we observed so far, still maintaining their throughput. It is a novel prototype level technology. We're still trying to prove it up. We're still trying to make sure it actually works before we commit, but we are on our third trial at this point, so we obviously think there's some promise there. The run we're doing right now really is going to be focused on its ability to continuously sustain these levels of water production at low pressure levels, low energy inputs, but we know that they're making some darn clean water. So what is cavitation? It occurs when the vapor pressure exceeds the static pressure inherent in the intermolecular tension of water, obviously. Another way of saying it, water turns into water vapor due to pressure differentials at relatively low temperatures, so nowhere near boiling. We are turning liquid water into gaseous water with the 14 degrees seawater that's coming out of the portals. It does seem to do a little better with warmer water, which requires a little bit less pressure to get there. That's kind of intuitive, it makes some sense. Traditionally, cavitation has been considered something to be avoided by engineers. It's destructive, it chews up propellers, it chews up pumps, and that's all happening because when you have an impeller, you create a low pressure environment on the backside of your blade, and with that low pressure environment, you induce the cavitation, and we're talking bubbles on the level of a micron and smaller. So most of the current literature is associated with, and I have been diving so thoroughly into this, trying to explain what is actually happening within this machine, is associated with sonoluminescence and sonochemistry. Ultrasonic induced cavitation is kind of the mainstream use that there's entire sonochemistry departments at universities. And they've done everything from cleaning metals off of the surface of faces with ultrasonics to actually injecting proteins into cells themselves. So it ranges from medical to cleaning, just industry, but no one's really tried to do what GreenAge is doing right now. So it's really exciting. So what the question is here is what happens when the cavitation bubble disappears? This is a cavitation bubble. Kind of looks backwards. Looks like a drop of water sitting in the air, but it's actually a drop of air sitting in the water. And this is the moment just before implosion. So the cavitation bubble itself it's not supposed to be there, right? The water wants to come back together. And so you end up with this vapor, and you also end up inside with it's really air. So you have your dissolved air, dissolved oxygen, there's dissolved gases in your waters. When it goes to cavitate, the gas will kind of combine with the water vapor inside this bubble. So you have this intense environment. And the real magic seems to happen during the implosion phase. And this is the beginning of the implosion phase. And GreenAge is taking care to engineer exactly how those implosions happen. There's still a little bit of a trial and error learning process, but figuring out, dialing it in. And this is what happens at implosion. You have extreme localized temperatures and pressures, upwards of 5,000 Kelvin. And this has been documented by chemistry departments across the world. And it's difficult to measure internally, but you can do it a few different ways, and this is kind of the empirical evaluation where people have come up with. So 5,000 Kelvin, surface of the sun is 5,800 Kelvin. You're talking temperatures that are just difficult to comprehend. Pressures, 20,000 PSI is occurring within this bubble as it collapses. The bottom of the Mariana Trench, the lowest spot on the ocean that will crush every sub we've ever made, 15,750 PSI. So these extreme pressures and temperatures, it's less than an instant that they occur. But in that time, some interesting chemical reactions seem to take place. Like I mentioned, it's difficult to measure internally, but it's been externally verified. As the bubbles collapse, sonoluminescence is actually light. Energy comes out of the bubble as light. Energy comes out of the bubble as sound. It has an acoustic signature that we can measure and say, okay, this is physically, theoretically what we calculated. It should be. And it also comes out as heat. So you can actually, your water starts to warm up a little bit. Whatever is happening in the cavitation might start to warm up a little bit. And so those, while it's difficult to actually see for yourself, there are external influences that we can measure, and we can kind of confirm that what we think is happening is actually happening. This is just a little diagram of the Green Age system as it was constructed that we tested up here from September and October. It was what we're calling now the first generation system. It was fairly simple. Not a lot of instrumentation, and we've gone ahead and fixed that for them. It's okay. So here's our influent water. Come into our feed tank. I'm going to explain this the best way I can. Main system flow comes into your cavitation pods, where you blow up your water, essentially. Then we move into our bag filter solids collection, which is these large filters that are doing the work so that the membranes don't have to. And then we move into a polishing TFF membrane, TFF being a tangential fluid filtration. So there's two main styles of membrane plants. You have your DFF, which is a direct fluid filtration, and it's really kind of, you can think of it as a deadhead setup. So at those plants that are operating at 500 to 1,000 psi, you're taking the water in and you're trying to recover 99.5% of the water you put into the system. It's a dead end at the end of the membrane, and you are just cramming it through the membranes. You're not giving anything else anywhere to go, any other options, and you're just using overwhelming force, pressure, power, and might to force this water through these membrane pore spaces. And what happens is all the water that's in, or all the dissolved ions that are in the water start to plug those pore spaces. So every 5-10 minutes, whatever it is, you got to run the whole system backwards. And that takes time, it takes power as well. And then you end up with this reject brine that is, it's just one that all RO plants struggle to figure out how to deal with that particular waste. So a TFF membrane actually has an open end on the other side. So instead of trying to cram it through, Green Age and TFF, you see them in kind of protein isolation, biomedical arena. Haven't seen that many. I've heard tale that there are some who tried to do it in the mining space, but I haven't seen any examples myself yet or been able to dig any up. But the TFF membranes, so we shoot the water by the membrane, and what water decides to come out, comes out. And what water wants to keep going, keeps going. And so there's a lot less force, there's a lot less brutishness. You get this scouring action from the water as you fling it through the membrane, so they're self-cleaning. This system has no backwash whatsoever on the membranes at all, which is somewhat revolutionary. And that's one reason we're concerned about the throughput ability, which we will find out with the test that we have going on right now. So you have your effluent, that what makes it through the membrane, and then you have a concentrated reject stream. And we figure that about 10 to 15% is making it out as effluent or permeate, and the other 85% is headed back into the feed tank. So what this action does is it starts to concentrate your solution in your feed tank, because you're pulling clean water out, and you're sending all those analytes that were in 100 gallons of water back in 85 gallons of water in your feed tank. And so then you start getting some really interesting reactions that start happening as you start to supersaturate your fluids. There is a backwash of the cavitation pods themselves, and it's very quick, it lasts about a second, and it happens very often, every few seconds. So they just kick water back into the cav pods, and then the water kicks right back into the feed tank with any solids that are starting to build up on their screen or their process where they're inducing that cavitation. There is a big pump right here, and there's a big pump right here. And those should probably really be on this diagram because they're very important. This pump's called the delta pump, and what you're trying to do with that one is actually create a vacuum within your system. So you're blowing that water up in the cow pods, and the water is now in vapor state. Water will boil at a PSI of 0, right? You put a vacuum on it, and room temperature water will boil. So if you can induce at least a low pressure environment, if not a vacuum, on the backside, you can maintain that gaseous state for a little bit longer. And really, this system that they have recently built, the Generation 2, this whole cycle is happening in anywhere from 2.6 to 3.1 seconds. It's flying around the system. It's incredibly quick. And so your goal is to keep that gaseous phase for as long as you can, because as that's happening, your ions they're not bonded to the water vapor. They're concentrated in what liquid is remaining. And so that chaos where these cations, all your zinc, all your manganese, all your arsenic, whatever your metals are, your cations, are now ripped from their aqueous bonds where they were just hanging out with water and everything was happy, and now you blew them up and they're flying around, and then you have your anions, your oxygen, and your sulfates, and whatever else is in there that also have been blown apart, and they're in flux, and the idea is to get them to combine with each other for an instant instead of binding with the water, and if they bind with each other, you can grab them with a bag filter. And that's about the idea. Does that sound? Yeah? Yeah? You're an itch? You guys are happy? All right. All right. So this is what it looked like. This is the Generation 1 system, and I'll say it was frugally built. They, and on proven technology, you gotta do what you can. And this workhorse really, it's been around the country. It's treated a lot of water. They've used membranes for longer than the membrane manufacturer would have told them they would have lasted. In here you have the cavitation pods and the instrumentation. We were running off 480 3-phase power, 480 volts. Right here you have your bag pods, and this is where your inline solids collection was happening, and we'll see a picture of those in a minute. Here are your polishing membranes, and this is your feed tank, where a lot of the magic is happening. But really, it's all the pieces of this system work in tandem and with each other to produce what we've seen so far to be some pretty darn interesting effects. So that's the Generation 1 system. And for our 2016 field trial, we ran on the Treasury portal using a variety of membrane sizes, 20 Daltons, 100 Daltons, 250 to 300 Daltons, trying to just get a better understanding of what our solids might look like, of what our throughput changes are as we change the Dalton sizes, and just trying to gain a general understanding of what the heck's going on here. We performed a few small batch tests, very limited runs on some of the more acidic waters up there, just to gauge the capability of the system to handle a broad influent profile, which I had mentioned earlier, that wide profile just makes it so tough to have a one-size-fits-all solution. And so this particular system, the goal was like, maybe this is it. Maybe we can use something like this. And it performed pretty darn well. There's certainly pieces, it's a piece of the puzzle, potentially, but it really removed it removed I think 98% of our iron from a few hundred milligrams per liter down to 10 to 15, 99.5% zinc removal. I'll get into a few of those numbers here in a minute. But it did have the capacity to work on a broad influent array, which is really pretty interesting. Our 2016 field trial highlights. We reduced dissolved zinc by 95 to 97% in the influent and the treasury tests, and that was sustained over the course of several of these trials. The electrical requirements for the 5 to 9 GPM flow rate, depending on the configuration of the system, did not exceed 15 amps using the 4880 volt 3-phase power, so reasonable. All of our solids passed the RCRA T-clip tests for hazardous waste characterization and landfill disposals. Wonderful news. In one of our limited runs, we produced 4.8 pounds of saturated solids, and the bags actually just hang, so we didn't do a sludge water percent content. Plus, we think that that system for sludge collection is going to continue to grow. Ideally, we'll remove the manpower element out of it, and it'll be able to just kind of move our solids into a larger bin. So that's ongoing. But we did produce 4.8 pounds of solids out of 250 gallons of pH 2.7 water that started with a dissolved solids to suspended solids ratio of 0.996. That means basically all of our water had dissolved solids. So the fact that we were to pull it out on a 1 micron bag is remarkable. It means that we were transitioning dissolved solids into suspended solids that we were capable of grabbing. Dissolved solids, it's kind of a weird concept, honestly, once you start really digging into it. We have made this line in the sand that 0.45 microns constitutes dissolved. It's not necessarily a real thing. There are suspended solids that are smaller than 0.45 microns. But the key is being able to get them to maybe mash up to large enough values or sizes that we can just grab them in an efficient process. And so we appear to have made that happen. And then we did some X-ray diffraction and mineralogical analysis on our solids. And we found that crystalline gypsum formed in our bags, and jarosite, which was a total surprise to me, really interesting. Jarosite is a potassium iron sulfate hydroxide. So the fact that we had a hydroxide form is kind of incredible in a sub-pH 7 water. The fact that we pulled sulfate out of solution and put it into a crystalline mineral is pretty remarkable. And the fact that we pulled potassium out of solution is pretty remarkable. Potassium is a monovalent ion. It's usually highly conservative. It's difficult to get out. The fact that we got it was really, really cool to me. And this was part of the qualitative result for the field trial that ended up pushing us into this stage 2, generation 2 field trial that we're doing right now, where we're trying to develop more quantitative understanding of exactly what's going on. This was really focused on, well, what are we making in the bags? What have we seen? Do we think this, just based on this qualitative data, is this going to be a sustainable process? And there was certainly enough promise shown based on these elements that we decided to move forward with the trial that's going on the mountain right now. And hopefully you'll all be switching from the Atlas Mill to go look at with me. Here's some of the water that we produced from the treasury. Crystal clear, beautiful. Our conductivity ranges based on the Dalton size. Once we started going to larger, the 250 up to 350 Dalton sizes, we did start to see our conductivity climb a little bit. We had some more calcium making it through. There's a lot of ions. Conductivity is really just a really broad measure that doesn't necessarily tell you that much about the quality of your water. But this water, I think, was about 150 microsiemens, which is a reduction of 80% from our influent, which is about 600 microsiemens. And you can see certainly we had plenty of total iron and other elements that are present in the treasury gauge because it's a circumneutral 6.5 or so. So all your iron and aluminum is typically present in total form flakes. It's not dissolved, it's not crystal clear. So those were pulled out of the bags, but also the dissolved zinc, which we dropped that 99.97% number, all removed, all gone. There's the water. This is the head tank from the water that was 99.6% dissolved when it started. So it was essentially clear when we started. This is half an hour after running. into that 350 gallon run that we ended up processing about 250 gallons of, because there's a little bit of dead pool storage in this first generation system. But this water started clear. Kind of crazy. No chemical addition. Recombination, formation, precipitates forming in the water. I don't know how to draw any other conclusions. This is what the bag filters look like in your bag pots. The solids coming through, you can see it's just kind of a felt. They've figured out a few different materials that seem to work better than others. And I want to say this one's rayon coated. And so here you can see it's just a large flow-through filter. You can move a lot of water through it. It's not like you have to cram it through like you do a membrane. And you grab those dissolved solids that are transitioning to suspended solids out right here. You open the bag pot up, you pull it out, you let it hang out and dry. And these are the solids that we were forming. Ideally, we'll get away from the bag pots. If this one bears out, our continuity test this month bears out, the bag pods are, they fill up in a day. They're kind of quick. They're not the most sustainable idea with regards to manpower requirements and access requirements. So if we could get it on a conveyor type system or something like that, that would be the preference. And definitely thoughts on that. People are thinking about it. So what the heck is going on with the chemistry inside the system? We have that, as I was discussing, the reaction catalysis of the anions and cations. Susslich, he's had a really good article. I'm going to refer to him a couple more times here. And he's a professor of sonoluminescence at the University of Illinois, I believe. And so he's done a lot of work with the acoustically induced version of cavitation. Cavitation is cavitation. So they've observed a number of times that the rate of reactions for your reductants and oxidants seem to be accelerated when cavitation is taking place in your water. We've also hypothesized, and these are my theoretical ideas for the most part. I mean, certainly I'm drawing from other journals, I'm drawing from the expertise of GreenH, but we're all still learning what exactly is happening here. So, if in 2 years we decide that this was bunk, please don't hold it against me. I think I'm close. I think we're close. Supersaturation within the feed tank. So when that material starts to concentrate in the feed tank, precipitates want to form, things want to bind up. The water only has so much holding capacity before stuff starts to fall out. But we seem to be seeing things start to fall out before they're really hitting their saturation capacity in the feed tank. So if you were to say concentrate your materials in the feed tank by 10 times, and then you were to take that 10 times water and you were to run it through a cavitation system. Now the cavitation system is blowing your water up. So the question kind of is, well, how much liquid water is actually still in that cavitation pod? Because your gases aren't holding the chemicals or the materials. So whatever constituents have been concentrated 10 times in your feed tank, now as you blow the water apart, let's just say you have 5 to 20% that's still liquid water in your cow pod. Let's just go with 10% for easy math. Whatever your dissolved ions are that have already been concentrated 10 times in your feed tank, as you blow that water up and now you only have 10% of your water that's liquid, you've actually taken your saturation up to 100 times for an instant, for a microsecond. And you're doing it while you're inflicting pressures at the Mariana Trench. You can consider some subsurface earth processes where you might start to form crystalline minerals, and temperatures near the surface of the sun. So you have this hyperconcentration that's happening, and you have these incredible pressures and temperatures, and it really just makes for a playground between physics and chemistry right at the interface, where some absolutely fascinating things seem to be happening. You also will have absorption happening as you drop your iron out of solution. You're going to have these iron oxyhydroxides forming on your bags. They're very absorbent. The iron oxyhydroxide, especially when it's fresh and clean, will grab dissolved zinc right out of water. It'll grab other elements out of water. It'll glom stuff. It'll glom it right out of there. So that's another potential action. Getting back to the violence of the cavitation, there's a couple pictures I'm going to show you that demonstrate some of those dissolved minerals below that 0.45 micron line. 5 minutes? Or am I done?
Is that good?
Yeah, 5 is great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Are we good? All right.
How are you doing?
I'm tired. The violence of the cavitation implosions really seem to be making some interesting things happen. And then you have this interplay between the water vapor, the vacuum in the system, and that hypersaturated liquid. So the way the water vapor and the membranes and the hyperactivity all work together is really something we're still trying to understand, still trying to evaluate. But it seems to me that some of these gases, they just, if we could even keep it in that hyperactive state, might be passing through our membranes just a little more easily and keeping some of our pressures down. And with this hyperactive water, as it's all just trying to recombine and come back together, we might actually be seeing some cleaning action on our membranes as they maybe pull some of those solids back off. Once again, all my ideas, all theoretical. We'll see. Suslick 94, once again. This is a scanning electron photograph of 2 zinc particles. So you see the scale there? 1 micron. Half of this, essentially, is what we call dissolved. So the idea here is that in that violence and in that hypersaturation mode, as everything comes back together, Suslick theorizes that you actually start welding, melding, whatever you want to call it, these subatomic particles, not subatomic, sorry, these atomic particles together. And if you do this enough times, you can grab it on a coffee filter instead of with a 20 Dalton membrane. Cool picture. Just found this one last week. Just every week, every day, it feels like I'm learning more. We're all learning more. We're all getting better. We're all trying to understand. And this is another one out of the same journal. This is before the ultrasound, so before cavitation, and then 30 minutes after cavitation. So you see these particles down here. This is even better. So here's 3 microns. This would be considered a dissolved particle. This would be considered a dissolved particle, dissolved particle, dissolved particle. If after 30 minutes, they all seem to start kind of grabbing onto each other. And you've got these temperatures where you're kind of close to your melting point for some metals, which is pretty interesting on this bottom one. The tungsten kind of demonstrates, because its boiling point is up around 6,170 degrees Fahrenheit, or 34 maybe. This cavitation wasn't quite reaching that level where it was starting to get close to the melting and want to actually melt. And then these ones with lower melting points obviously just grabbed onto each other and really started pulling together. Really started pulling together nicely. So they're big, you can grab them without that much energy. What do we not know at this point? How long can the membrane sustain their throughput? We're really trying to prove out the ability for it to operate continuously. This trial that we're doing right now will be the longest continuous operation ever run on this particular platform. Do the pressure requirements climb? Does the energy requirements climb? Is the process sustainable from those bullets that I outlined earlier? The first system didn't have any continuous parameter monitoring, didn't have influent flow, didn't have pH conductivity. A lot of the things that are pretty standard on these kinds of platforms that scientists want to see when they're trying to evaluate the systems are going to be feasible. So yeah, that's a big one, filling in the data gaps. Evaluate the potential for some of those analytes. Is there going to be a conservative analyte in there that's actually going to just not come out? And if that happens, the membranes will plug, and then you're going to have to think about another way to do it. Doesn't necessarily mean the system's dead, but it might mean you need another piece of the puzzle to make it all go. So there's the piece of the puzzle. Solids management, how can we do that without manpower? What kind of sludge content as far as water percentage? What are disposal requirements? Is there a potential to reuse what we're getting out of the system? We had one of our sludges was 34% iron, 9% aluminum, 7% zinc, concentrated metal. And it really hurts me when I hear people call migrated wastewater. It is not wastewater. It is natural water. I mean, even when we talk about what is natural, everything that comes out of the portals is natural. It just does a little faster. And so really, I would love to see some more research and ideas into how we can start to repurpose this stuff, whether that's soil amendments, whether that's smelting, and I mean, the mountains are mining themselves. They're bringing the metal to the surface. How can we use it? What can we do with this? There's potential there, and it'd be really great to tap into it, especially if you could start to break even on your treatment processes. What are our total electric requirements, and then continued study into what the actual mechanisms are that are making all of this go. So Idarado, since that first field trip, we've been working hard with Green Age. Green Age has been absolutely amazing, taking our advice as we collaborate. We've got a system now with, I believe we have 136 sensors, so from 0 basically to 136. We have pressure transducers across the gradients of membranes. We have pressure sensors across our bags. We have continuous flow monitoring parameters for pH, conductivity, 5 different flow sensors. This is the system that we've got, and we actually just fired up this morning, I think, for a real continuous run. We've been troubleshooting those sensors and all the stuff the last week and a half or so, trying to just make sure everything's ship-shape. And so I think we're running water right now. That's what the new sexy system looks like versus the old warhorse. It's really come a long way in a short period of time. We're excited about it, but there are no guarantees at this point. I just kind of like to stress this too. Have confidence if this system is found to not be a viable answer. We're going to continue to explore from IRM to whatever the next system somebody comes up with. There will be a way to manage this, but up to this point, historically, it has been an intractable problem. So we really appreciate your patience and support, and know that we are trying hard. We are trying hard. I would like to give special thanks to Idarado and Newmont Mining Company, Larry in particular, been incredibly supportive as we move into these arenas that are untested waters. It's very easy to be risk averse and spending the amount of money, which has been considerable on these types of systems and investigations. Of course, my colleagues at Worthington Miller Environmental, Green Age, you guys have been amazing. Thanks so much for all your collaboration and willingness to be flexible as we start to just really try to break this system down. And engineering analytics is up on the hill right now, and they've been doing a lot of our instrumentation and helping us out with really dialing stuff in. So a special thank you to everyone there. Does anybody have any questions?
So a couple of times Devon made mention of possibly the unattractiveness of the Gen 1 system. But I just want to mention that Devon didn't have any pictures of his IR first try.
I made that for $200, Larry.
Which made the Green Age system look like a prom queen.
Thank you for that.
Just keeping it real.
You always do.
I have two quick questions. Is it safe to say that this is the area where this technology is being prototyped the most, or if anywhere? And then the second question deals with the electrical requirements. The math is 7,000 watts for 5 to 9 gallons per minute. Do you see reductions in scalability and electrical requirements? And does the requirements determine what waters can ultimately be used?
Great questions. These guys have been testing, this system really came out of the oil field. And they had been looking for ways to shred everything from hydrocarbons all the way up to paraffins. And looking at wastewater and frack water and ways to deal with those hydrocarbons. So I think that my guess, I haven't really confirmed that. Marty.
My name is Marty, and I'd like to answer your question. The data that we have coming off the mountain now indicates.
Marty's the physicist for Green Age. He's the one who did the cavitation studies and expert in the system.
Thank you. We're running at about 1.5 kilowatts. flow rate of about 5 GPM to 10 GPM. So I think that the power usage is extremely minimal, almost on the verge of the amount of energy it would take to get the dissolved minerals out of solution. So the inefficiencies are extremely small.
Basically, we're running on 2 pumps. 2 mid-sized pumps on the new one. Really, the one into the cavitation pods, and then the one that's pulling on the backside. And we've been adding some more instrumentation, so there's some of that there, but definitely manageable. And yes, we can confidently say that this technology is being tested really for the first time in this capacity on the planet on Red Mountain Pass. And if this trial goes through and the energy requirements and everything else seems kosher, we're hoping that this will be possibly the first permanent unit ever put on the ground.
So this is a kind of a leading question, but is this being tried at any other mining sites in the near future?
I believe there are plans to test it on a variety of them. Yes, people are interested.
Where are we?
Lisa Richardson, BLM.
We've been able to get these guys at American Town for 2 weeks after they're done here.
Sure. Thanks.
You didn't talk about pH of the water, I don't think.
So we did see one that was actually that would have been a pretty interesting one. So the pH of the treasury is about circle neutral, and there wasn't a whole lot to change. Came in around 7, left around 7. We did see it climb up to 8 for a little bit. We do see some hydrogen peroxides, H2O2, start to form in the cavitation process. That's been well documented through the sonoluminescence and stuff. And the more acidic waters were coming in at 2.7, and our discharges were around 4.5 to 5. With the feed tank also climbing in pH. So the ethanol was climbing and the feed tank was climbing. So there's a little bit of a chemical mystery there. We figured the hydrogen is recombining in a variety of different ways. And while that might not be necessarily entirely appropriate for a discharge, once you've got the iron out and all the stuff, the idea of being able to put it through a limestone bed or a wetland reactor becomes much more viable, sustainable, and we can kick out a well-buffered solution into the creek that can even do more work once it gets in.
So you said it past the. I think we're gonna have to. You have more questions for Devon? We need to do the field trip, or we need to kind of. We have some more. There's some more logistics here, so everybody sit tight. Can you come on? Thank you very much, Devon.
Thanks, guys.